Alrighty. See, episode 7 is officially in the books.
In the books.
And, well, I mean, first things first, we're one episode away from the season finale of season 1 here. So that's pretty, it definitely feels like we're at the rising action toward the finale right now. Like the last 2 episodes are kind of, it's like, what's going to happen? It's like the anticipation is like kind of crazy.
And again, I'm trying to tread lightly on what I'm saying, not to spoil anything, but it's I mean, we'll get there, but it's very interesting because I feel like how they set it up at the beginning, where this episode ends, feels like this is like the resolution, right?
Okay.
But clearly, I mean, we don't know, as an audience, we don't know what's going to happen next. But the fact that it's not over yet, you're like, okay, something's going to happen. Just figure out what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, at least in the last episode, we kind of talked about the changing of the threads of the story with like Maghra and Tamacti Jun having their own story, which now kind of culminates into a new story where now Queen Kane, instead of having her own side story, I'm kind of skipping, but that kind of resolves itself into another, the ABC plot, as we kind of laid out last episode, has now turned us back into AB. And then the developing story of the children and then the paternal struggle of Baba Voss kind of it's like, at one level it felt like this episode was sad, but then it like flips, which we'll get to that. I'm trying to think, did it really even end on a big cliffhanger? I don't think it really did. It was more of just like, keep watching,
Yeah, not a cliffhanger, but definitely like because like again, we'll get there, but like the lights, blinding lights, which I think is a metaphor.
Oh, that's
it said right before then.
Yeah.
But it ends on that, and you're just like, oh, okay. So not a cliffhanger, but in a way it is, because you're like, I mean, we're gonna talk about it, so whatever. But like, Kofun and Haniwa finally, reach Jerlamarel.
Or so we think.
Right. And so, yeah, it's like, okay, time to figure out what this is, the whole journey, right? We've been with them for 7 episodes up till now. So what's all the fuss about?
Yeah, it's gonna be, I don't know, it's really interesting, right? Especially because it's like this looming character. I mean, you see him once only once with it, and it was just kind of this random occurrence in the forest with Baba Voss, and the children were still like infants. So it's like episode 2, and now that you haven't seen this guy in basically some 20 years.
Yeah.
But so we'll get to that in the next episode for sure. Yeah. Rewind into the starting of this episode, which starts with the first time you ever see the shadows getting the tables turned on them.
What a crazy way to start.
Yeah, right.
Like they seem not like invincible. Like I feel like they do seem vulnerable. Like when we first see them, like how they move, and like they're not like these offensive anything. They're like more information.
Yeah, they're probably like spies.
Yeah. So like very weak in terms of like physical attributes, but kind of priceless. But like they've seen like larger than life, right? Because like they can't hear him, obviously you can't see him, so like they don't need to be, right? It's like they've mutated, they don't need that trait. And then here comes Boots, dumbass. I don't like Boots at all. Here comes Boots and turns the tables on him and can see them, and that's like in a weird way their biggest weakness, right?
Yeah.
And
like you can't, it doesn't matter how silent you move if you can, like, can you imagine like in our world if someone's like, I'm sneaking, and you're like, bruh, like
bruh, I can see you, I can see you right now. Yeah, it's like, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know, in a way you feel bad for them, even though they're with what's that,
the worm dude,
worms or whatever is disgusting name for I just feel like if I'm naming a city, like if I am the king of anything, right, and I can name the city, I'm not starting with the city of worms. I understand it's like Silkworm, but like City of Silk has a much better about playing. So that guy's a psychopath for that alone.
Oh yeah. We'll get to him too. I do definitely agree with you. I think that guy is very much a psychopath.
I mean, the name of the city alone should have told us that. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that part was really interesting, but also the interesting part is right after he threatens the remaining shadow, it cuts to him talking to Maghra, and then Boots is in the same tent, and he's like, I know he's not one of your children, which is incredibly perceptive, but also he's got sight. And she's like, well, cat's out the bag. I can't really lie to this guy because he's gonna see right through it. And he's like, okay. And then immediately Maghra tells the truth, because I don't know, I feel like she's almost incapable of lying, like in a deceitful way. You know, like she's kind of just a decent person.
Yeah, it's that's interesting because she lied to Baba Voss and them the whole time about who she was. So maybe no, but I think you're onto something though. I think you are, because maybe she lied. She lies when it's like serving something bigger, like the greater good, or like in a protective sense, like this information could be harmful.
Yeah.
So I'm withhold
I also
that.
like lying that she's royalty or not. Like, I don't even think she said, she's just like, I'm just a traveler. Like, she never even like mentions any of her past. So it's like, I don't know. To me, it's like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, even if she said who she was back then, she's not there anymore. And so even if she said that, it wouldn't have, like, it doesn't improve her position that she's currently in by saying like, well, I'm a queen or the princess, I guess. Like,
That's true. Now, okay, that's true. But that conversation between her and Baba Voss will be interesting. She's like,
yeah.
I just technically lie. Like, okay, cool. You know. And I mean, you're right. You know, not that I remember, at least she doesn't like specify who she is. This is kind of like, here I am, right? She just
It felt like she was just kind of random person that happened to be connected to Jerlamarel.
Yeah.
Only for the fact that she has his children who have sight.
Yeah.
That is what it felt like.
Yeah. And I think you're right. But I think the reason that worked, how it just kind of never questioned with Baba Voss, is because he had his own past too. And that he didn't want to he wanted to bury it. So I think he understood, because they both came to the Alkenis as outsiders, right? So he was never going to question her, because I think he was the only one in that tribe who could really relate to her and say, I understand. And it doesn't matter where you came from. It's just where we are now. And then
that's a really interesting point, because it's like, yeah, you had two people who were literally, maybe in some ways, both literally and figuratively running away from their past, or at least looking for a start over.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. You know, they said, both of us have baggage, don't care anymore. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, I think that does it. Really, it's going to be interesting when, I mean, hopefully, but eventually, you would hope that they're going to meet up again, and then, no, so my brain's going here, but like thinking too about her arc, about Mark's arc, like I just wonder where that's going to take her. Like, how long are they going to be apart when they see each other again? Is she going to be like? Is she going to be like accepting of her, like royalty? Is she going to like revert back to that? Is she gonna, push further away from it and like really push closer into Baba Voss and that? Like, it's gonna be interesting because it can really go anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it felt like even in this episode when she's talking to Tamacti Jun, during this conversation, she's pushing back against him and saying like, well, I'm the princess, don't listen to me as like someone you respect, listen to me as like someone who, because I'm, you respected my father type thing. And I was like, whoa, this is weird, because it's like you're really seeing a different side of Maghra that you haven't seen. Like, you've seen Maghra the mother like the whole season, and now you're seeing like Maghra the princess / pseudo ruler.
Yeah.
Like, somehow she can command more authority than her own sister. Like, her sister felt more of a fanatic at most whenever she was like she would wield her authority with like as like a club. Whereas Maghra can say something some way, and it's like, oh yeah, she's the one you should pay attention to.
Right.
It's like, speak softly, but it carries a lot of weight in some ways.
Yeah. It's like the difference between fear and respect.
Yeah.
And Kane, maybe because this is really interesting. I'm glad we're getting into this, but with Queen Kane, do we know her first name? Queen Kane's first name?
I think they mentioned it but I don't remember if they ever say her first name.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I was like, I actually nothing comes up that I can think of, but yeah, let's look that up real quick.
I'm looking it up. Sibeth. Sibeth.
Sibeth. Okay.
I like
So
Queen
oh,
Kane better.
Queen Kane. Yeah, we'll stick with that. But with Queen Kane, maybe since she was knowingly undeserving,
Yeah.
that kind of, and maybe she already had some stuff going on before, but like that kind of facilitated her leadership or whatever rule style, like
Yeah.
how she,
It's like the Napoleon complex, right? Like you overcompensate, which exasperates your own feelings.
right, like you see how far that got her, but then you see what you see where that got her. Like she had to destroy her kingdom. Where now we have Maghra coming in and going along with this scene with Tamacti Jun and Bones and her. The way she's speaking to him isn't in a demeaning sense, and it's weird because, like you said, we don't see her like this.
Yeah.
Until now, but she doesn't demean anyone. She's not like trying to impose her will on them, right? She's very much like, trust me on this. This is what we have to do. And at this point, she really just wants to find her family, that being Baba Voss and her kids and parents. And she's just like, because Tamacti Jun with the shadows, they figured out where Queen Kane is. So he's like, we have to go. She's like, but we can't quit the search for them. And so they're battling, trying to figure out what to do. And ultimately, they decide that they're going to have a team continue searching, and the rest of them are going to go get Queen Kane. And there's a moment that I really liked right after this, as they're about to head off. Maghra leans down over one of the soldiers, and like she's on her horse, and she leans down and very softly says, "Are you in charge of the search party?" He's like, "Yes." He's like, "There's 4 of us." So she's like, 8 would be better, right?
Yep.
And like the way she said that, I'm like, Queen Kane wouldn't have said it like that. You know what I mean? That would have been her character. She'd be like, "Are you stupid?" Like just like demean the person, maybe even kill him. Who knows? But it's like softly spoken, and the way that the camera angle is too is at a lower angle, so she's like above you. And I'm wondering if that's the first time they showed her in that light, where her.
Yeah, I mean that's like one of the only times you've ever seen her on a horse. I think for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought about it that way. And then even that angling right as she says it, it kind of cuts back to a more wide angle shot where Tamacti Jun is riding his horse toward the camera, and he says, "Make it happen." Like not even looking back, he just says it offhand, And it's like, it's even more incredible too because here's literally the Witchfinder General who's found one, like, and he calls it out, and it says, "There's a witch in my fucking tent right now. Like, what do you think I'm supposed to do?"
Yeah, it's like, ignore it. She's like, leave it alone.
She's like, maybe no one else has to know.
And it's just cool seeing her in that role, but then it's like, okay, seems like it comes natural to her, doesn't it?
Oh yeah,
like it's just effortless, which is cool. And then
it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm like so excited to see Queen Kane and hers dynamic together because I mean they're polar opposites. I mean even like one has hair, the other bald. Like, they're just opposites. And where Maghra might be slightly more. I wonder if there's a dichotomy there between Kofun and Haniwa and Queen Kane and Maghra.
Oh,
Not
interesting.
sure if there is, but I just wonder, like, Haniwa might be a little more Queen Kane-esque in a sense, and vice versa. But what was my thought? Lost my train of thought.
Like a parallel between the sisters and the children.
Yeah, just essentially how they're gonna work, and like how Maghra is very much kind of again softer spoken, and like she ran away. She could have taken up arms and be like, no, we're gonna battle this out. She ran off. She's like, that's not who she is. Where Kane is like, no, like she's cunning and she's gonna figure this out like with the iron fist. She's not gonna back down by any means, which we see in this episode, which I kept calling her badass, and you finally saw why.
I saw all the pieces get together, you know what I mean? I was like, oh damn. Like I still can't help but like to jump to that scene, I think we'll spend most of the time, at least this first half, talking about the Maghra Queen Kane side of the story, and then we'll end with the Baba Voss and the children. But like to see like the scene where it's more just a monologue, even though the psychopath says it's a conversation, which is so fitting for that character, you know. And like the way that scene starts is like she's being brought food, and then Queen Kane, and always her ever defiant nature, throws it across the room or knocks it across the room, which totally fitting of the character.
I'm not eating that shit.
Especially after she's already been beat to hell however many times. It's like she's got a huge bruise or welt like right by her eye and stuff already. And not to mention you had the coin removed from her chest. Like she's not in good shape. Let's put it that way.
She's having a rough time. She's having a rough time.
And I just thought about this while you were explaining it too. Like the change, right? Like we went from Maghra kind of playing the secondary role as like the mother figure, right? And now she's like been on the upswing ever since Queen Kane destroyed her home. She's been on the downswing as Maghra is rising into this new role. And I think right now what we're leading up to is the eclipse of their like relative power levels within this universe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like especially when they meet, and we're not there yet, but you know, it's like we've kind of gone where one was kind of playing a back burner thing, and then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, and never mind. And now you got that like pass off, the handoff of the ball as they like, you know, fulfill their whatever roles they've been building towards in this world.
Yeah. That's a really good observation. That's sick. And I think you're spot on with that. That's dope, because I mean, where we see Maghra start is she's like, you know, things couldn't be worse, right?
Yeah.
Where Queen Kane, maybe things weren't perfect, but like, I mean, she had her, you know, her kingdom.
Relatively on top of the world.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good observation. I didn't even notice that, but I think that's spot on. And I think that it's perfect and smart how they did that, because now it makes sense that there's a change in the power dynamic, right?
Yeah.
Because of just what they're going through. And what's even better is I don't think it's gonna go smoothly. Like, there's gonna be some, oh, okay. Yeah, you thought just because I was down. Queen Kane's gonna be like, you thought because I was down for a little bit. I'm just gonna
right. Well, plus, I mean, like, there's still all this unspoken stuff, like the tension that's building, like the whole Baba Voss Maghra thing.
Yeah.
Tension building. And then there's also that other unspoken thing of like, oh, wait, my sister had children with the guy I wanted to have children with thing, which is like, that's like a whole episode of Maury ready waiting to happen.
Or not the father.
Like, you know, something tells me Queen Kane is not going to be like just totally cool with that.
No, I feel like she's not totally cool about anything. It's not in her DNA.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but what is in her DNA, and I've been said from the beginning, I'm like, she's such a badass. Like, she's crazy. She has all these things, but like at the end of the day, she kind of is just a badass of a person, right?
Oh yeah.
So
she's resourceful, if nothing else.
Yeah, and like her endurance is impressive, because the what's his name, the Worm King, whatever you want to call him, I forget his name.
I don't remember his name either, but
I don't like him. He's a good actor. Actor played him great, but like when you hate a character, the actor probably did a good job, right? Like, so that's where we sit there. But she's like beaten and battered, and we're not skipping too much, but Tamacti Jun and Maghra finally make it. They're like figuring out their plan of attack. Boots obviously is the one who goes and he can scope out the area, see where everyone is, and say they have this many people. Queen Kane's lying down. I don't know if she's alive or whatever. Just kind of lays out the information. And Tamacti Jun ultimately says it needs to be quick, precise, and quiet, because if we fuck up, they can just kill her, right? So it has to be precise. So of course, Tamacti Jun's like, I'll just do it. Which is cool, because I think this is the first time we see him really in action. Like, he's usually like kind of standing back. I can't remember. I might be, but I can't remember if we see him like in a fight to this point.
No, we only see him as like the imposing, Darth Vader-esque, like just a presence that is scary.
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool when you finally see him in action, and he is pretty effortless at it. He gets his way in, is pretty silent up until the very end, right? Someone notices one of the bodies he's killed,
Yeah.
sound the alarms or whatever. And then the Worm King guy or whatever is like, oh crap, they're here. And he's looking for his knife to, I don't know if he's going to kill Queen Kane or just hold her hostage, whatever he's intending to do. The knife's not there. Who has the knife? That lady who we thought, the Queen Kane told her identity to, and we thought betrayed her. Really, that was Queen Kane's plan the whole time. Like, I'm going to tell you this, tell him so he knows. They're going to go reach out to my people. They're going to come here.
She played chess, dude. It's like 3D chess, and she won.
Like that. I was like, yo, she literally took she didn't have to do that, but she literally took a beating for however long she was there for, knowing that yeah, just wait. And she kept saying, just wait, just wait. But yeah, I mean, just that alone, her endurance there, her being able to plot that move and know that it was going to work out in her favor. I mean, I don't know. She's really dope to me.
Yeah, it was really cool. And also too is like I see a lot of parallels between Tamacti Jun and Baba Voss in these in this episode, like where Baba Voss was like the hero protector type, and now you see the parallels of Tamacti Jun kind of transitioning from this bad guy to more of this gray character, who's willing to put aside his own orders and his own what's shaped his life in terms to save his queen, and also respect the legacy of someone he respects.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, here's like a bad guy that I'm like, I can't hate him. Like, I don't like, he's a bad guy, but is he really a bad guy now? Right? Like, here he is, like risking himself, defying the orders he was given by the very queen. He's now defying orders to go save.
I mean, this guy is, and we talked about this while we were watching, but a good villain is someone who is not objectively so, right?
Yeah, like they're great. Like they walk in and out. Like depends on the perspective in which you're viewing the character.
Exactly. So obviously from Baba Voss and their situation, he's the bad guy. He's the guy they're running from, right? And there's really no other way to see him. But then you switch it and you look at Maghra, Kane's even point of view. And it's like, this is just a loyal, dutiful soldier, even to Maghra. And like, he's been chasing her his whole life, put him through all this stuff. He said he's been away from his family, almost died because of them, really.
Right.
Like he almost had to, kill himself. And immediately when he figures out, oh my God, you're, in the royal bloodline, and he's just like, no, we have to respect you. Like,
pump the brakes.
Yeah. It's just like he has so many good qualities that I feel like people strive to have, like just to be loyal to no extent, and like he has his job and he's gonna do it and he's gonna fulfill his duties, no questions asked, right? So it's cool. I mean, he's a beautifully written character, and I feel like it's hard not to like him, even though he is still a bad person. Like at the end of the day, like he's killing people. He's killed hundreds of people for searching for something, but he did it because he had to.
Yeah,
because he said he would. It's his responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's what makes him beautifully complex in a complex world, right? Like it's all of these kind of things, and it's even in some sense you get the same feeling with the way Queen Kane's being treated with the city of worms. Like you get to really see what, like, in quotes, true evil is like, because here's this character that there's no other way to describe him other than just like the worst of the worst. Like even comparing him to Tamacti Jun, I still consider the slaver more evil, which is crazy. Yeah. Like here's this guy that they've been running from the whole story, and yet this character who's only been present for 2 episodes is more clearly evil.
Yeah, like clearly more evil. And I love that they did. I love when stories do that, right? When you have your bad guy, which is Queen Kane, Tamacti Jun, all of them, right? But then you put them in a position where now you're on their side. And you're like rooting for Queen Kane, like, damn, she's, captured, and there's this crazy dude and he never brushes his hair. um, all that kind of stuff. And it's like now you're rooting for her, and so now it's like, fuck, I'm not supposed to be rooting for you though. You remember that? And I'm like that. You're in a position where now you have to decide. It's like, okay, whose side are you on? You're
Yeah.
rooting for her for the last however many episodes, but we already know Baba Voss's journey and things like that. I mean, where do you sit?
Yeah.
And we'll see now that, because Queen Kane, she's free now. She, killed the guy. She's free. She's still beaten though. But now that like cloud of slavery, I guess, whatever you want to call it, is not hovering over her in the hostage situation. Now it's like, okay, now that the objective bad is gone, the objective villain, now it's back to like, okay, Queen Kane can assume that role again, or we can assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting going forward too, because Tamacti Jun kind of ends that storyline with a question to Queen Kane, I guess, because immediately she's back into her old habits of like, they're my people, they're my soldiers. Because I think Tamacti Jun says like my men have risked themselves, and she kind of corrects him, and he's like, I don't know. He goes like, maybe you should rethink whether or not they're your people anymore or not.
Yeah.
Like respectfully, of course, but like he kind of, and it's like, ooh, shit.
I love that exchange because, and I think right at that moment is when you pointed out like it does seem to be like a romantic kind of dynamic between them. Like right,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, then it like started turning like right when you said it. It was like shifted, and it's like, oh, but he's still loyal at the end of the day. So even if he does have that for her, when he's like, he finds out that their kingdom is destroyed.
Yeah, I think the veneer had fallen off because he realized the mistake she'd made.
Yeah, and he was like, damn, like how, and especially with Maghra coming back in, and now he has another option, because maybe before he might have known, but they're, that was it, that's all they had. But now he's like,
yeah,
nice shiny army. I'd be like, white.
Especially because Maghra too, it's like they've been like setting this up this whole time that Maghra's been the rightful heir, or maybe not the rightful heir, but the one better suited to lead.
Yeah.
And they've been setting this up for like the last 2 episodes, and it's like, damn, maybe there was something to that,
Now he sees it, and I like that they didn't. And I don't know, this is kind of a cool thing that I noticed. Like, I like how the kingdom's gone, right? And they have all these soldiers, these nameless characters, right? They're just extras or whatever. But it's like the unit, the witch hunters group.
Yeah.
Their homes are gone. I feel like a lot of times in shows and movies, they like these people are just pawns, and they don't have feelings. And maybe we don't see each person's feeling necessarily, but like Tamacti Jun is speaking for them. Like they're not gonna like that. Like I won't have their loyalty if they have nothing to fight for.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's so, to me, I love that they brought that up, right? Because now it shows that not is the only dutiful to who he's working, like his queen, and also his people. He's like, what do you expect me to do now? So I love that. And Queen Kane is kind of like, well, I don't give a shit. Those are my men, not yours. And that's when he looks over to Maghra like, bro, you trying to do this? You trying to come on. But yeah, I mean, it's I can't say anything else, but we'll see next episode. But yeah.
It's really cool. I'm like really excited to see where it goes, and it's even more interesting too because like we kind of mentioned the last couple episodes, like the splintering of the storylines, but it's like now the story isn't just like big A plot with the children and Baba and what's going on back at the ranch kind of feeling. Now it really feels like 2 parallel stories that almost have the same level of importance because it's got Maghra as kind of like one of the big drivers of it now. And so now it's like if you're a fan of the show, you can have 2 different versions of the show you enjoy more, right? Like you could have a subplot and a main plot, but it can change depending on the viewer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if you're a viewer who really likes the dynamic of Queen Kane and all that stuff, now you can enjoy the show for that and then have the filler being the children and all the other stuff.
Right. That's true. And that's actually a really good point that I didn't realize. But what they did here is one, it's almost equal amount of time in each
Mhm.
story, right? It's not like so much Baba and then like you get like 15 minutes of them, right? It seems pretty equally split.
Yeah,
And
especially this episode.
yeah, especially this episode. And even if it isn't, the action was almost exclusively with the Queen Kane
Yep.
Maghra story, where I mean, we can call it the main story, however you want to see it, Baba Voss and Kofun and their journey to get to Jerlamarel. It's a lot of still like exposition in a sense, right? They're explaining their relationships and like what's going to happen. It's a lot of just there's more questions. I mean, there's a lot of questions as a whole, but there's questions like we don't know what's going to happen after this point, after we get where we're going. And it's still,
I think that's a good point to transition too. With like, this is like the first time they kind of get to chill out after the whole losing Maghra, because like we just talked about Maghra and all that stuff, but I forgot that both Baba and the children and all of them think that Maghra is dead. And it's like, oh wait, I forgot. Like, like, this is a good part of like a well-written story where the audience is in on the secret, and that there's a whole bunch of whole things going on that they have no idea have gone on. And they're like, well, we got to keep going on, and for the sake of Maghra, because she would want us to keep going, kind of thing. Like, in some sense, the spirit of Maghra is driving them forward. And then you have this scene between Hanawai and Kofun, and Kofun's kind of like apologizing because he said some pretty mean things in the cave when they got captured, which I think they were warranted a little bit.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an interesting thing because, again, Kofun is like wise beyond his years in so many ways, and then like he kind of cautions Hanwei, like, you need to like temper your imagination or whatever you expect to see in Jerlamarel, or what you hope to find in Jerlamarel once we get there, because he might not be everything that we imagine him to be, which is like, damn, like, especially with like the whole, there's like all this like God talk and, gifts and whatnot. I think it's just a really interesting thing to bring up in these kind of stories, because I think they do get a little like grandiose at times. And it's like this call to humanity almost, that it's like, hey, we gotta like not just use this as an excuse to like hurt people, or to like go blindly into danger, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean that's what makes Kofun so cool, right? Like, it's so likable, I guess might be a better word, because he is given something that sets him apart, right? And I think this is why people relate to like your favorite guy, like Spider-Man, or like those kind of heroes that everyone just loves, and like it's gifted with something that makes him more than the average, right? But he still has the wherewithal and like the clear sight, and I don't, no pun intended, but to see things how they are and say, like, I mean, at the end of the day, he is just a man, right? And what we've learned in this show and like in real life, and this is why what shows do well, is you can relate to it in a sense, and like people sometimes let you down, like in a number of different ways that you can look at it, right? And Honey was putting Jerlamarel up on this pedestal and like this promised land and all this stuff, and everything's gonna be fixed. All we have to do is get there. It's like her end goal is getting there, and she thinks everything will be good. Like, she's so focused on that one point, and he's just like, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we can't, just because we're gifted with something else, we can't look down. Again, no pun intended, but look down on other people. And I don't know. I think he may not necessarily be my favorite character, but I think he's the character I like most. I know that doesn't make sense, but
no, I get it. Like, I think he's the most grounding of the characters. Like, he kind of takes the harsh world and makes it seem like not everything is always going to go to shit, I guess. You know what I mean? Especially because it's like every time you turn around, everything, I mean, he's even captured by slavers in, one of the first episodes. Like every turn, it's like, here's a little shred of humanity in a world that's lost it, I guess. And it's like, no matter, like, we can rise above our circumstances to be better than what the world tells us most people are like. Even brings it up with Boots. He's like, we saw Boots happen, and this is what Maghra didn't want us to be like. you know, those kinds of things. Like he became a monster because of his people, and
Right.
he's like trying to make her aware of like just because we're different doesn't make us like we can be just as shitty as anybody else, I guess.
Yeah, and just that easy. I mean, and that's why too Maghra and Baba are so they're more than just, well, especially Baba, I guess, but they're more than just brute force protector, right?
Yeah.
They really, I mean, as we can see with Boots, how different their lives could have been if they weren't there to
Yeah.
do to coach them or raise them in the way that they did.
And even
Uh,
Paris, right? Like
yeah, Paris too.
I think in some sense then this is going to be like a religious reference, but you have like the trifecta of like mentors slash role models, where you have the mother figure, the father figure, and then you have Paris, who's like outside of all three of them, but she represents like the philosophical slash like spiritual element of like you know, go chase your, like maybe like an Obi-Wan Kenobi type figure,
Yeah.
where it's like the spiritual, like you need to still go out into the world and find out who you are or who you want to be, not even find who you are.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like Paris is a um I don't want to say forgotten character, but I feel like she has a huge importance too on how they came up, right? Because she
Yeah.
was the one who wanted them to read.
Yeah.
She was the one who's like, use what you have, but still grounded in the sense that's like, but don't let it.
Yeah. We'll get to an awesome quote near the end of the episode.
I was gonna say it's something, but
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll start with the first thing that Baba says, because this comes back too at the near, like there's a like an interaction between Baba and Paris like late at night, and he's still like torn between like Haniwa and like how she's so driven to find her in quotes father, and he's still trying to place like how do like he's like am I some sort of sucker, like basically giving my children away to this guy that just chose to be absent kind of thing. And even he says that he's like, you know, I fought for you on a hill because that's what parents do, you know. It's like this undying devotion because that's the role he's chosen to play in their lives, which is just, I don't know, it's so commendable.
It is.
And what did he say? You said it earlier before we started recording.
I forget the direct
It's
quote.
like the distance, like something about giving them the space but always being there.
Yeah, yeah. He's like knowing that you give them the space to be on their own, but like you're close enough still that you're protecting them still, and they know
Yeah.
you're protecting them still. Um, and it's and I mean, Bob Voss is just dope. How do you not like that? Like he's just a dope. Like the fact that he believes he just lost his wife, right?
Yeah.
That's his only tie to those kids. So like just even that alone, that's his only tie to those kids. Like he could be like, well, peace. Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't have to, but clearly that's not who he is. So like that would be like what? So he wouldn't do that. But it's like he's so like those are his kids to him. It's not that these are my wife's kids from some dude over here. Like these are my children,
Yeah.
right? And he can't have children, so it's probably it's even deeper connection to him because like he'll never be able to birth his own kids.
Yeah.
So I mean that he is their father. You know what I mean? Like point blank, period.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have that, but then you have, he believes he lost his wife, and he's still able to one, and maybe this is a role of parents in general, and like me and you don't have kids, so maybe it's something that we haven't fully grasped what that means, like how that feels, and I'm be curious how like maybe Eric or someone,
Yeah. I'd be curious to ask what like Eric knows or feels now.
and he might relate on a level that we can't even comprehend currently. But anyway, he's going through his own trauma and tragedy, but he's still being able to say like I know what my son needs, and maybe he's a little more level-headed, like I'm not worried about him, but like my daughter is tormented.
Yeah.
It's something she has to get through on her own, because if I keep pushing her, it's going to just push her deeper and deeper or further and further away. So I have to protect her, but I have to let her figure things out on her own. And I don't know, it's just like what a good dude. Like
Yeah.
strong-willed man.
It's a very complex, and it's one of those things that's really interesting just because you see this thing play out, and it's like it's like one of those things where there's never a right answer, right? Like it's time and place and like temperaments and all these things that are so subtle that it almost lacks words to describe like what the right, like you can't, like if you asked advice to anybody in that situation, almost anyone's answer would be different.
Yeah.
You know?
Literally.
And then it would change because the reaction to that response would be different depending on the person that it was tried on, right? Like, so it's like this never-ending situation that there's no good answer and there's no right answer and there's no right time, and like it's just all these things that it's just so complex. And it's like part of that. I don't know, maybe it's like this weird, not weird, but it's a coming of age story in some ways, where it's like how does someone become wise? Or it's like how does a child go from being a young adult to an adult? And in a lot of ways it's like they have to experience it for themselves, and even as a parent you don't want to fully just be like, well, you got it, I've taught you as best you can, so I'm just gonna see you later, you got my number if you need. Yeah. But like it's also like the parent never wants to completely leave just in case too.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is the distance that you should stay at in order for that like contingency plan to be, still viable?
Right, just in case. Yeah. And I think at the start of the show, or like, when Hanu and Kofun were, came of age, I guess you want to say, when they're old enough
Mhm.
to have their own personalities and things, I think he was kind of more trying to mold her, like, no, this is how it should be done, blah, blah, blah. But, as he's figuring out, that's not going to work with her, and so he's figuring it out on his own, and still leading him to take him to this guy who is this guy? Literally, I'm taking him to some random person who showed up once, helped me kill a bear, and then said, "All right, peace." I was like,
You got it from here, right?
I was like, dude, what? I'd be like, all right, thanks. Like, I appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's when it gets to, what would you call that? It's like a ritual, like that thing.
Yeah, it looks like some sort of monument. Yeah, shrine is probably the best way to put it. And it looks like some weird cult more than anything. Like
Yeah.
it's not like, it's really atypical for everything we've seen. Like we know there is like some sort of pseudo shamanism type stuff, but like most of it we've seen is more of like religious ideas taken from like leftovers of previous human life, with like factories and cities, they call it the god bone, things like that. Like it's stuff that we recognize today in our contemporary world, but they have lost connection to it, and so it's something that turns into pseudo religion. But this is like some weird death cult type thing. And maybe it's not as weird for like people who are blind, but for people with sight, it's like, oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even for them, when they like, as they're walking, they're getting closer to, Jerlamarel. They found the Lavender Road.
Trail. Yeah, road or trail. Road is the name of the episode, the Lavender Road.
Lavender Road. Yeah. So that, they found it and they're walking through it. And then it's like these just decaying bodies hanging on this like shrine-esque thing. And, they're like, obviously the people who are blind are like holding their noses like much earlier than Hanu or Kofun are for obvious reasons. And there's a passage on the ritual. I'm holding it like this. I don't know why, but it's like they're whatever form of scripture they figured out to communicate. And it says, I don't remember exactly what it says, but basically like
a poem.
Yeah, like poem, riddle, whatever, warning, maybe. Like you will be seen if you continue, and if you continue, there's death or something like that. And they have all these bodies like a warning, like don't proceed. And again, here we have Baba Voss saying like, I'm going to do what I need to do with my kids. Like we didn't come this far to turn back. And I know this, I'm doing this for Maghra because she's not here anymore. And so they keep trucking forward. And then this scene is really cool. I don't know how you felt about this scene, but this whole scene, it's like the last. It seems like the last stretch. It's like literally like a straight fucking valley or whatever right in front of them, and like they're like these two cliffs on either side, and they just have to go through. But if you go through, there's archers above, and any type of sound, they shoot their arrows right on target, right? So they're trying to figure out how to go. Baba Voss apparently is like a professional axe thrower, baseball pitcher, dude. You know, he has Kofu spot out one of the archers, and he whips this axe he has, this pickaxe, and like nails the dude in the head on the first try. I'm like, yo, you're okay, come on. I couldn't do that with sight. You know what I mean? Like, get him blind, my guy. Like that's I don't know.
Like that's how all you know. He's like, all right, point it for me. You know, like point it out for me, and I got this. And I'm like, God damn.
Yeah, I was like, dude, that's pretty impressive, man. So, you know, it is what it is. It worked. So, you know, they're gonna go take the arrow, right? So luckily they have a shadow with them. Bo is her name.
Yep.
And you know, she goes, gets the equipment, she ends up getting shot on the way back. Like I think an arrow falls off her after she picks it up off the sky or something. So it's like the slightest bit of noise, and it's like, fuck, she gets shot in the leg. Hani was like running out to go get her, and it's either Kofun or Baba says Hani would no. And then everyone stops. Like it's ceasefire, ceasefire, everyone stops. And you know, a guy on the other end is like, if you're a Hani and Kofun, you are free to pass, but no one else.
It's crazy they know their names. Like, why would you like? How many people are gonna just be like, "Yo, wait, who's out there on the list?"
That's what it felt like, right? Like you could have gotten the club.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of gotta wait in line. Like, no, they know the owner. You're good. Come on,
Right?
at this YouTube. But yeah, so I mean, then this is kind of I think this is what you mentioned earlier, where it's kind of like sad almost or sentimental, because
Yeah.
you know, and I'll let you speak on it too in a second. But like Baba Voss, he says, "Go." Like I'm not gonna go. This is what we came here for, right?
Yeah.
And he like gives them up to the unknown. If you want to, you know.
Yeah, I mean it really did feel like that, like this weird like saying goodbye thing where it was, but it's not like the end of the season type stuff, which we'll get to why this it kind of flips, like it flips twice, like you know, it's like, oh gotcha bitch, but like, but like it felt really weird because like all the way through this whole thing it's always been like, to use the cheesy, there's nothing, you know, nothing stronger than family type thing. But like in this sense it has been like, it's been this whole thing the whole time where it's like we stay together as a family no matter what, and like even if that means by the end of this we aren't together anymore, but you know, it is what it is. And I was like, it seems out of character for that just to be like, all right, see you later, you're done, like I've done my duty.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I thought that was really interesting, and especially because Kofun, it starts out with Kofun in his typical fashion of just being like, no, we're not doing that, that's not how this works, like it's not just, you know, us, it's not just our path, and like this is everyone's. And then Hanwha says something of like, he never could understand us, like he lives in a separate world than ours, and I'm like, I don't know about that. And then Paris with her infinite wisdom, I thought that was like, I don't know, it felt so good. She almost, actually, I just got the thought, she's like a Gandalf type figure. That's her role.
Yeah.
And you know, she kind of like connected the dots between like the earthly world of Baba and Maghra, and then the sighted world is the children, but then she's kind of the intermediary of like, no, you can't go and create the world of the sighted, you have to create a world for everybody to live in it, you know, not just this. It's like really weird, like not weird, but it's like really telling because like only sighted people can come in, kind of thing, you know. And so it's like, here it is again, it's like to me it feels like a foreshadowing, and I'm sure you run out people to comment on this, but like it feels like foreshadowing of like, I don't know, I'm really distrustful of utopian anything, and it's like here's like, you're gonna walk into the sighted utopia, and then all of a sudden it's like all the veneer is gonna be, you know, it's gonna rear its ugly head very quickly, because any utopian ideal is usually doesn't like exist very well without severe controls.
Yeah. I can't comment much on. Well, yeah. But what I love is her quote, and then I'll say the quote. It's beautiful. All right. So the quote is the gift of sight can be blinding. And I love that quote because it's kind of like her saying, you know, she's sending them off too. Like I feel like again, she probably has that like they mean something to her too.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean, and maybe a maternal sense, like you said, Gandalf. I think that was perfect. But letting him off, but saying like, you know, you guys are going into this world, we're not accepted. You're gonna be blind to like the truth and the realities of the world because you're gifted, right? So you don't have to worry about things that we worry about, but that doesn't make you better. Don't let that blind
Yeah.
reality.
I thought too, like this was one of the scenes that Baba, like a couple scenes ago, he says that he kind of checks Hanwha with something of like, oh, we can see, like we can see straight ahead, like you know, we're good, we can do this. And then he asks Kofun, you know, where's the sun in the sky? You know, where's the god flame in the sky right now? And he's like, what does that have to do with anything? He's like, I'm just trying to wonder how long it takes until your sight, you know, your gift means nothing for today. You know what I mean? Like leveling the playing field. It felt like, you know, it's like that excuse that parents give their children. It's like, because I'm the parent, that's why. Like that's what it felt like. Like you should still respect me because I've lived longer than you.
Right. It is valid. He's like, dude, you guys are only really useful until about 6 p.m. There's never be, you know what I mean? Like after that, like we're all the same. If anything, I'm the more useful one. So I like when they do that banter. But you know, like, blind versus not blind banter, and it's like usually Baba wins that argument. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean in the episode it kind of, you know, pulls back what we brought up earlier with what Baba was saying about protecting from a distance. You know, you think they're leaving. Paris walks up, you know, Baba's like, nah, we're not going anywhere. He's like, I have nowhere to go. I think he says, I may be wrong in this quote, but I think he says, I have no home to go to. Those kids are my home.
Yep. Something like that. You paraphrased it, but yeah, that's the sentiment of it. He's like,
Yeah.
where else would I have to go? My family is gone. And like those two children are my family, you know, if not for the memory, if for only reason to remember, like they're Maghra in, you know, incarnate,
Right.
you know, like that's all he has left of Maghra in his mind. So it's like, why would he throw that away if he's already lost her? Like he's not about, like, if there's anything about Baba that we as an audience can take away is we know that he's driven and dedicated. You know, he's more likely to die first than to give up.
There's a cool, with you just saying that, there's a cool parallel between him and Tamacti Jun. In that regard, where they're dedicated, they're dutiful, and they're not gonna just it. There's nothing selfish about either of them, and I think that's why they're so likable, because nothing they do is for their own self gain.
Wow.
So that's a really cool parallel. I'm glad you said that, because that's a really cool parallel between the two, and I think that's why maybe we like both of them, and they're both badasses. You know, down to it, they're both badasses. Tamacti Jun even had a nice little banter with Boots about like, he's like, you know, Boots makes a front at him. He's like, I've forgotten more people that I've killed that you even lived days or something.
Right? Where he goes like, just because you have sight, you think you've ended even the playing field here, and he's like, think again. Try like, don't even
don't try me. You know, and like Boots is kind of like. Like sits back like, all right.
He's like, I still don't like you, but I guess I'm not gonna test this theory.
He's like, I don't know if I'm gonna call your bluff today, but someday maybe I'll try, but not today. Yeah, so
I want to see Kofun and Boots go at it. That's
oh, dude, there's so much to look forward to, and I mean, I know we still have another episode, but I mean, there's a lot of things going on that is just like, I mean, this next episode, you know, they made it. As we could assume, they made it to Jerlamarel, right? So, like, what's that gonna look like? But
right?
yeah,
I mean, you know, but
but I mean, when you see that, you're like, okay, what is it? You know, Baba Voss is hanging out for a reason. You can guess. Like they're not just gonna like leave him there, like never show Baba Voss again. He's just there in the woods.
Yeah, and Paris and Bo are just gonna chill,
just chilling in the trees, just hanging out. Like, so something's gonna happen, and then you know all the different, you know, storylines and twists and relationships going on with Queen Kane, Maghra, Boots, Tamacti Jun. I mean, yeah, I'm excited for you to see the season finale, man, because it's good.
Yeah, I'm just, this show has been a lot of fun to just break down. And even still, it's just been fun to just see. I don't know. I feel like ever since we started doing this show, it's been fun to see the actors like Jason Momoa just kind of explode into many different things. You know, we've been alluding to in the previous episode with Dune and things like that. And I don't know, by the time this episode come out, we may or may not have released a separate podcast on Dune. So stay tuned or go listen to it if it's out by then. I can't predict the future as of right now.
But either way, it's coming or has already came.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, it's just really fun to just kind of pick these stories apart and just to see like what it takes to do good storytelling. And as you can tell, I mean, we've already spent like another 50-ish minutes on here just like talking about an episode, and it's like it's so cool and refreshing to see stories done well with characters done well. And I think that's what drives this story more than anything else. It's not the action or the special effects and the explosions, it's the human elements that are driving this one, which is like, I think that is sometimes lost in like the Hollywood big blockbuster stuff. It's like you get wowed by the special effects and like, look at how many explosions I see or stuff like that, you know. And this is just a refreshing take on like what is the story trying to tell you and make you think about humanity, I guess.
Yeah, no, and you know, I'm a big proponent of not losing story for sake of spectacle. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like it's its own element. So I don't want to bash it because I think it's just in a different category. And it's fine. And that I don't necessarily agree with this. Just to go on a tangent for really quick, I don't agree with this wholly, but I get what Martin Scorsese said when he said, I don't know if he said Marvel specifically or superhero films, but whichever one he said are more like an amusement ride or amusement park. And I'm like, I get the sentiment because it's supposed to be fun. You go see it. It's like, you know, you kind of leave your regrets at the door, stuff like that. You're amused for however long you're there for. And then it's over and it's not like a lasting impression necessarily. You know what I mean? Like now with how Marvel in the MCU, just the scale of what they're doing is kind of impressive. So like it does sit with you. Like you kind of have to marvel at it. Not that's no you kind of have to like it's just impressive, you know what I mean? But again, it's not something like for TV shows like Breaking Bad or movies like I'm trying to think of a good one. Like Portrait of a Lady on Fire was one that sat with me for a while. But those movies that like it's just like these works of art, and like I think is in that category too, or making its way if it's not there yet. Where it's leaving a lasting impression, and it's something that is so foreign because it's a new concept. It's not a new concept per se, but like it's a different world, sci-fi people can't see, like we can't relate to that like practically, you know, but we can relate to it about the humanness and like what they're going through and like the dynamics and just kind of like how power can change people and like what happens when, you know, someone has a gift or something more than, and just how that messes with people. And yeah, I mean, it's just something that it makes you think. I mean, we've done what, 7 episodes?
I mean, 7 hours of extra content about this idea, right? I mean, it's like it I guess at the end of the day, it's the premise of like, you ask yourself, what if humanity can't see anymore? And then you give that ability back. And like, what are the growing pains of reacquiring the ability of sight? You know, and it leads to all of these really interesting dynamics of all real life things that all humans deal with and will continue to deal with forever as long as we're on this planet, right? Like, and I think that's what, when a story is done well, it allows you to play with complex ideas that may get people angry or frustrated or hurt people's feelings in a way that you're not talking about another person, and that you can like intentionally be mean or insensitive in some way, right? I think that's why people like fiction and fantasy and sci-fi, because it allows you to imagine a reality that could be, but also by imagining the reality that we live in.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, it's those parallels, right? And it's like you can digest it. It's easy to digest. It's not so real that, you know, it becomes hard to watch. Because I mean, we're in a hard time. I mean, there's light at the end of the tunnel and it's slowly getting brighter. But I mean, the last year for you know, the not even just our country, but like the world has been tough, you know.
Yeah.
So when you can see something like this and it's not just a constant reminder of what's going on, but it's not so far removed that it has, you know, it's hollow
Yeah.
at the same time. And I think that is the beauty of what film and TV can do and art in general.
Yeah.
But specifically this, it like translates, yeah, I'll go with that. Like translates trauma in a sense. So it's not traumatic. You don't have to live it. You don't have to necessarily experience it to understand it. And it's someone else's voice saying, this is what's happening through the world, and this is how I view it.
Right.
And this is the way to digest it. And you don't necessarily answer the question, right?
Right.
But you're just posing them and saying, like, you can come to your own conclusions, you know? And I
Yeah.
mean, the show isn't over yet. We'll see where it ends. But I
And
mean,
season 2, we got a whole another
Yeah.
season to do, which is I'm so excited. And just in general, like there's just so much here. And I mean, ever since we started doing this too, I don't see us stopping with just I feel like we're going to continue doing these,
Yeah.
with films or any other formats. It's a lot of fun just to see where the like picking apart things, I guess, is what makes it fun, because it's easy to look at something and just be like, well, that was fun. Just be mindless about it. But I think when you stop and pull back the curtain a little bit, I think you get to be like, it's like you're not just an observer, but you're like a participant in the thing too.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And you get a deeper I mean, some of the things we picked up on. I mean, this is my second viewing.
Right.
Just in these conversations, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And so
Yeah.
it gets appreciation for what goes into making like a work of art like this. And it's
Mhm.
I mean, it's really cool. We won't stop because I mean, I mean, we have so many options. You know, I can't wait for the Dune one, and our friend Joe is going to be joining us with that,
Yeah.
so that'll be cool. And I think we're all seeing it again. I think we're all going to watch it again.
Yeah, I think we're all gonna watch it again, and we could always do a watch party
Yeah.
to
Um,
do that one too. But yeah, it's like, especially right now, I feel like there's a lot of people, like you brought up Marvel and stuff. I think there's a lot of people in Hollywood who are looking at the landscape and they're kind of like, okay, well, this worked for the last 10 years, but what's going to be the next thing that's going to be shaping the next 10 years, And I think there's a lot of people who are up and comers who are like, what are the ideas nobody's playing around with yet? Or what are the the seeds that nobody's put together yet that might turn into being something humongous, the next Star Wars or whatever you want to call it. it's
yeah.
it's I think we're at a really unique point in film, but also just creativity broadly of like portraying stories that especially, I mean, like you said, with the last year being hard, I think hard times come very unique perspectives and creativity. And so I'm expecting in the next couple of years a lot of new ideas coming forward that were not accepted or just not thought of. It'll be very cool to see get brought to life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we'll be here for every step of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So
Yeah.
one more episode, hopefully for season 1 at least. So
Yeah.
hopefully see you all there. And it seems like this season it's gotten a lot of people interested of the show. So we'll keep going.